Good evening, all the joinees. Hi, this is Ansu. I welcome you all to the webinar conducted by NGEN Markets. By the time the others join in, let's have a look at today's webinar topic. So today we would be majorly focusing upon mutual fund analytics. Firstly, we will be viewing the performance of a fund with the benchmark returns, or for that matter, the category average returns. In addition to that, we will also be understanding the AUM trend for each of the fund, wherein we have introduced a new feature under the AUM tab for a single fund that way. Secondly, we would be looking upon the asset allocation of every fund that we are talking about. How has the asset allocation for each fund changed over a period of time? Next, we would be looking upon the rolling returns analysis, the drawdowns, as well as the scenario analysis as well. And finally, the quorum would be open for a Q&A session. You could either unmute yourself or type down your questions in the chat box as well. So let us begin. So this is our landing page on NGEN Markets, which happens to be the Markets tab. Now, since our topic was pertaining to a single fund, or rather a mutual fund analysis, I would simply be searching the fund in this search fund option that you see at the top section. So let's say I search for a fund which is HDFC Flexi Cap Fund. You just type in the name of the fund and you can simply select the fund, which will take you to an in detailed single fund analysis. Now, once the fund opens up, there are basic details related to the fund that you could see into this box at the left hand side. Firstly, it will show you the ISIN or the AMFI code that is associated to each fund. In addition to that, you could view the asset class into which the fund comes under, as well as the category as well. So since this happens to be a flexi cap fund, you could see the asset class as equity and the category as flexi cap. In addition to that, you could see the option mentioned as start and end date. You can change each of these just by clicking on this change as an option. So there are certain preset time periods that we have provided on the platform. In addition to that, you also have an option to set in your custom start dates as well. So let's say for now, I am taking in a time period of 5 years ago. So you can see the start date has gotten picked up automatically as 4th May 2020, which is the date exactly 5 years ago from our end date. Once we have set in the time period, the first tab that we would come across would be the fund performance, which is typically showing you the performance of the fund against that of the benchmark. Now here you could see that there is a blue line as well as a black line. So blue line shows you the performance of the fund and the black line shows you the performance of the benchmark. Now in terms of benchmark, what have I selected? Just a minute, there's a message that there's a low volume. Could someone confirm if my voice is audible enough?
You're audible.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Yeah,
I
sure.
have a can I have a ask a question, or is this the format that questions are asked after
Yes,
you're
that is
done?
correct. So the question and answering session will be at the end once the topic for the
Okay.
webinar is concluded.
Okay.
So, yeah, right. So this is a section wherein you could see the blue line showing you the performance of the fund and the black line is showing you the performance of the benchmark that is selected. So by default, you can see since this being a flexi cap fund, the benchmark of Nifty 500 has been selected. Let's say you wish to change the benchmark. Maybe I wish to take the benchmark to be the category average. So all you need to do is just scroll up right here on the right hand side. There's an option of benchmark. You simply go to this engine tab under benchmark, and here we have an option of historical SEBI category averages. You simply search for your category average. Once selected, this will now come up as a benchmark for your fund. And here you could see that both the fund and the benchmark has been mentioned as rebased, typically saying that both the benchmark as well as the fund would have a different start points, or rather would have a different start levels, which we can also confirm right here. I've just selected this actual NAVs checkbox. So you can simply see that the fund as well as the benchmark has different start points. Now, in order to view a fair graphical representation of these movements of both the components, we've just rebased both the components to 100, post which you could have a fair graphical representation of their price movement. Once this graphical data has been viewed, we'll come towards the right, which shows certain statistical data. For example, the first parameter mentioned here is cumulative return, which is the absolute point to point return. For the fund, which is HDFC Flexi Cap, it says the cumulative return is to an extent of 285%, while for the benchmark, it is to an extent of 185%. So clear outperformance by the fund is what we could see right here. In addition to that, you could view the CAGR return, annual growth rate, that is there for the fund as well as for the benchmark in the 5-year time period that we are looking upon, which is at 30.7% for the fund, and for the benchmark it happens to be at 23%. Now, in order to achieve or arrive at these returns, what was the risk that was undertaken by both the components? We can come right here to annual volatility, which is typically the standard deviation for the time period of 5 year that is under consideration. So you could see the fund has a risk of 14.85%, while the benchmark has a risk of 14.12%. So you can say a slightly higher risk is what the fund has when we consider it against that of the benchmark. However, once we come towards this Sharpe ratio, which is typically the risk adjusted return, we can see for the fund it is at 1.45 and for the benchmark it is at 1.10, suggesting that the fund generated a better return even after having like a slightly higher risk when we consider it to that of the benchmark in this time period of 5 years that we are analyzing. And we can also see that in terms of its Sharpe ratio, risk adjusted returns as well. Next to that, the other component happens to be historical VAR. Now, VAR stands for value at risk. What is the value of this fund as well as the benchmark that is at a risk? At a risk of what? At a risk of losing. Now, here you see 95 has been mentioned. So, this is typically the confidence interval. So, it is rather an industry standard to keep this confidence interval to be at 90, 95, or 99%. So, how do you read this data is, it says with a 95% confidence interval, there is a 5% probability. How do we arrive at 5? It is 100 minus 95. So it says that there is a 5% probability that if history were to repeat itself, the fund could go down by a total of 21.9%, while the benchmark could go down by a total of 23.3%. Now, if I put this in simple terms, let's say 100 rupees is invested in both the fund as well as the benchmark. The capital erosion for the fund would be 21.9 odd rupees, and the capital erosion for the benchmark would be 23 odd rupees. The remaining would be the capital that is protected, which is to an extent of maybe 79 rupees or odd so. Right? So here there are two VAR that you could see, historical and implied. The methodology of calculation of both remains the same. The only difference is the underlying component that is taken for the purpose of calculation. Historical VAR is calculated basis the historical returns, while implied VAR is calculated basis the historical volatility. However, as I mentioned, the formula or the methodology of calculation remains exactly the same. Now, once we have looked upon this performance analysis, I'll just go to this AUM tab. So right here, you could see the latest AUM that is there for each of the fund. So for this fund, HDFC Flexi Cap, the AUM is at around 69,000 crore. Once you click on this chart like icon, we've also provided you with the trend of AUM, or rather the AUM history, which says that in consideration to the previous month, how has the AUM changed for this month. Now, this is something that was originally there, the AUM history as a section. What we have added recently as a new feature onto this AUM tab is something that you could see just below that, which is mentioned as AUM changes, which is adjusted for a fund's return. Which is to say that what we are showing right here is typically the cash inflow and outflow for each of the fund. So we might know that the AUM changes for every fund happens typically due to two factors. First is change in the markets, the market fluctuation, and second is the cash inflow and outflow, which is typically buying or selling of underlying constituents of a fund. In terms of cash inflow and outflow, you might know that this data is not readily available in the market, as these are typically the fund managers' strategies. And inflow and outflow happen almost on a daily basis. Now, in order to understand that how we have arrived at this cash inflow and outflow data onto the platform, we've also provided you with an Excel download option for the same. So once you click on this Excel download, this is the page that will come up. In total, there are 7 columns that you could see onto this Excel sheet. First column being the date, which is typically the month end dates, followed by the AUMs for the respective month end dates. Now, the further columns, we will just calculate and I'll explain how do we arrive at these all 5 columns that you see right here. So for that, I am just copying the column heading and I'll simply paste it right here, right? So this third column right here is typically for AUM change, which is to say that in consideration to the previous month, how has the AUM changed in the current month? So for the same, the formula remains the same. I'll just click on equal to the current month AUM minus the previous month's AUM. So this is the AUM change, exactly matching which what we show into this Excel and what I just calculated. Now, in order to convert this AUM change into percentage format is this column of AUM percentage change. Now, for this calculation as well, we will be selecting equal to 31st March AUM divided by 28th Feb AUM minus 1. So you can see the percentage of change in AUM is to an extent of 0.086. So the AUM from Feb 2025 till March 2025, the change is to an extent of 0.086, which corresponds to this amount of AUM change. Now, once we have this change of AUM, the next column is the NAV percentage change. So since, as I mentioned, cash inflow and outflow happens on a daily basis and this data is not readily available, currently what we are calculating is how has the NAV changed in consideration to the previous month. For the current month, how has the NAV changed? So by previous month and current month, I mean 31st March 2025 and 28th Feb 2025. So what we will do now is we will try to locate the NAV or identify the NAV as on these two dates. So I'm simply copying this, mentioning the dates right here. I'll go back to the platform. For this fund of HDFC Flexi Cap, I'll select actual NAVs. I'll simply zoom into this section to get the NAV as of, let's say, 31st March. Yeah. So the NAV as of 31st March, once I've just clicked or rather kept my cursor on this point is 1846.22. So I would just mention it right here, 1846.22. And now we locate for 28th Feb 2025. Yeah. So it is 1734.60. So we've got the NAVs for both the month and dates. Now, simply how do we calculate the percent of NAV change? Again, the latest NAV, which is 31st March 2025 NAV, divided by 28th Feb 2025 NAV minus 1. So the percent of NAV change is 0.0643. So you can see that in total, our AUM has changed to an extent of 0.086, out of which, due to the market fluctuation or due to the market change, the AUM has impacted to an extent of 0.0643. So how do we arrive at this net percent of change is, we would simply be subtracting the NAV percentage change from the AUM percentage change, which will now give us the change of cash inflow or outflow. So simply we'll just click on equal to total AUM change. We would be subtracting the NAV percentage change, which is equivalent to market fluctuation that has happened for this fund. And once I click on enter, it says that this 0.0217 happens to be the cash inflow that has come in for this fund. Now, why specifically cash inflow? Because you can see that this figure has come up in a positive manner and hence cash inflow. Now we simply convert this percent into an amount form. That again happens to be very simple. Click on equal to sign. Percentage change will be multiplied with 28th Feb, the previous month's AUM, and we simply click on enter. So you can see this net changes is exactly matching with what I have calculated, and that is exactly what we show right here. 1,389 crore happens to be the cash inflow that has happened for the month of March. So this was the AUM changes tab that we currently looked upon. Next to that, we would be moving towards the asset allocation, which shows you the portfolio for each of the fund. So this is the latest holding that we are currently showing, which is as of 31st March 2025. So the data for April is currently under process. So our update cycle runs from 8th to 13th of the month. So by 14th May, you will be able to see the latest data, which will be as of April 30th, 2025. So currently it is showing you as of 31st March 2025. This is the components that form a part of this fund, which categorization each component comes across, and their current allocation in the fund's portfolio. Next to that, we have this position changes by month, which says in consideration to the previous month, how has the portfolio changed? So right here, there are 4 things that you can come across. First being the largest increase, largest decrease, positions that have been added, and positions that have been removed. So in consideration to the month of the previous month, which is Feb, what is the changes that has happened in March? It says the largest increase has come from ICICI Bank as a component, followed by Kotak Mahindra. Whereas the largest decrease is Maruti Suzuki to an extent of 0.52%. And there are few positions that have been added, and there are few positions that have been removed as well as of 31st March 2025. Now this analysis in consideration to the previous month can be done for the past 12 months as well. So let's say you wish to see in consideration to November 2024, what has the changes that has happened in the month of December 2024. You can simply click on this drop down and select your respective months as well. Followed by position changes by month, we have something called as position over time, which lets us see for a time period of 12 months in past, how has the changes happened for each of the security or each of the component that forms a part of the fund's portfolio. Now, the latest data will anytime be available next to the name of these components, or for that matter, the sector. The oldest data will be available once you scroll towards the right. Now, how do you read this data? Firstly, the first drop down that you see is percentage. So the month end dates have been mentioned right here, and each fund's holding into each of these stock are mentioned just below them. For example, Axis Bank, you could see from 28th Feb 2025 till 31st March, the percentage into Axis Bank has been reduced. From 8.87, it has come down to 8.86. Now, there are two reasons why this could have happened. First is typically either the shares have been sold out. If not, the price, the mark to mark capitalization of this stock would have changed. The price of this stock would have fluctuated that way. Now, how do you identify this is I simply click on this drop down. I select shares in lakhs. So now we are viewing this data in terms of shares in lakhs. So you could see while locating Axis Bank, the shares in lakhs remains exactly the same for the 3 months from 31st Jan 2025 till 31st March 2025. The shares in lakhs have remained the same, which is typically to say that the percentage change that we saw right here did happen because of the price, the stock price of Axis Bank fluctuating. Now, this is on a single security level that you're currently looking upon, which also shows you color coordination. So, green says in consideration to previous month, there has been an increase in terms of holdings or in terms of percentage, while red says in consideration to the previous month, there has been a reduction. This data, currently we are viewing it as per security. You could also view this as per sector as well. So there is a toggle option as by security and by sector. So once you select it by sector, so here sectoral categorization is what you could see, and how has the sectoral data changed or sectoral holding changed for each of the fund also comes up, which you can anytime download in Excel as well. Once we are done with the asset allocation, we come towards this rolling tab. So rolling lets us to see the consistency of the funds that we are looking upon. On a single fund level, we've provided you with 3 rolling windows tab. Simultaneously, you can edit all these 3 and view the data for all the 3 rolling windows simultaneously. All you need to do is put in multiples of 260 and you can edit the rolling window. Here you can view this data in absolute or annualized form. I'm just selecting it annualized because the time period that is under consideration is 260 and above, and hence I've just selected it as annualized. Now, how do you read any of this data that you see on your screen? Let's say I try to identify or read the data for 520-day rolling window. So 520-day is equivalent to 2-year holding period, which is 260 into 2. Now, it says an average of 24.71%, which is to say that if an investor would have held onto this fund, which is HDFC Flexi Cap, for any 2 year from this start date of May 2020 till this end date of May 2025, if they would have held onto this fund for any 2 year, their average rolling return from this fund would have been 24.71%. Now, how did we arrive at this average data? For that, I'll take you through this line chart as well. I'll just deselect 260 and 780 since we are currently focusing on 520 rolling window only. And I'll simply go to the very starting point of this line chart. So here you could see 520 is mentioned and 2nd May 2022 is highlighted, and next to that 37.9% is mentioned. So this says that if an investor would have invested exactly 520 days prior to 2nd May 2020, and that date is our start date, which is 4th May 2020. Since I'm just looking at the very first point, we get to know what happens to be the start date. So if an investor would have invested on 4th May 2020, exactly 520 days from our start date, which will be 2nd May 2020, you would have received a return of 37.97% from this fund. So here, any section that you keep your cursor on, 260, 520 days exactly from the date that you see onto your screen will be the returns that would be generated at that given point of time. And since we calculate these rolling data on a daily basis, once we take an average of all these data points that you see onto the line graph, we arrive at this average percent of 24.71%. Next to that, you could see volatility, which lets us see how volatile are these rolling returns. In addition to that, you could view the highest return that was generated by the fund in the respective rolling window, as well as the lowest return that was generated in the respective rolling window. In addition to that, once we scroll down, we have this return ranges as an option. Before proceeding with editing any of these return ranges, you need to select your return window. So since we were analyzing it for 520 initially as well, I'm just changing this to 520. And now you can anytime edit these 5 buckets that you see on the left. So let's say you wish to see what percent of times this fund has generated returns between, let's say, a 15 to maybe a 25 percentage. All the 5 buckets are editable. I've just edited the second one and it says 50% of times this fund has backtested to generate returns between 15 to 25 percentage. Once we are done with this rolling tab, I'll move towards the drawdowns tab. Now, drawdown lets you see how quickly a fund is recovering from any loss that has happened in the past, which is to say that the fund's NAV would fall, and once it has fallen down, how many days, or rather, how many working days did the fund take to bounce back from that loss? Now, how do you read this data? First column lets you see the loss, which is typically the magnitude of loss that a fund has experienced. Here you could see the magnitude is to an extent of 12.9%, wherein the NAV of the fund was at 1059 rupees. This started falling and it reached a price or a level of 922. Now, when did this downfall happen? We've also mentioned the date. 8th April 2022 till 20th June 2022. The NAV of this HDFC FlexiCap fund kept on falling. And post this end date, it took a total of 31 working days for this fund to recover, which is to say that 31 days the fund took to cross this start NAV of 1059. Only then we could say that it has completely recovered from this loss of 12.99%. And when did the recovery happen? We also show that. You can simply see on 2nd August 2022, the fund was completely able to recover from its loss. You could anytime locate that onto this line chart as well. The white region will typically show you the recovery phase, and the gray portion will typically show you the drawdown phase. Now, let's say I just try to locate 2nd August 2022. Yeah, right here. So you could see as on this date, the NAV of the fund was 1061.79, which is indeed higher than our start NAV when the drawdowns happened. And hence, we have mentioned 2nd August 2022 as the recovery date because on this date, it was able to cross the start price. Lastly, our last topic for the day is the scenarios tab, which typically lets you create in customized scenarios of your own. So the basic purpose of the scenario tab is rather than going and changing the start and end date for this fund, you have an option to create in an internal scenario as well. All you need to do is click on add custom scenario, give this scenario a name. Let's say I'll put in year to date 2025. So I'll take in start of the year and I'll take the last trading day. And I'll click on save custom scenario. So right here, our scenario has gotten saved. You simply do a left click on this and you can see how has the fund performed against that of the benchmark. Currently, we have taken category average of FlexiCap as our respective benchmark. In the year-to-date performance, we could see that our fund has indeed performed well when the markets were falling down as well. Our fund was able to indeed give a positive return too. And in terms of volatility as well, the volatility for this fund, HDFC Flexi Cap, is comparatively lower than that of the benchmark, which is category average. Now, the beauty of the scenarios tab is that you just need to create it once. It gets mapped to every other fund or every other portfolio that is there on the platform. So it is more like a one-time exercise for creating these scenarios that way. So this was all regarding the topic related webinar. If there is any further questions, you can either unmute yourself or type down your questions in the chat box as well.
Can we go to the fund performance, please? The first tab.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, so I had a question here. If you just scroll the screen a little up.
Yes.
So where we see long-term trends, for example, I was just trying to see the fund's trend since inception, and it said data wasn't available. This was Nippon India Growth. 1995 was when it was launched.
Hmm.
I don't know, whether I was doing the right thing by changing the date. Second was that, these graphs do not have a legend of the value. So for example, if you just scroll a little down, where
Yeah.
no, a little up, sorry, where you feed the value and all, uh, a little up,
This
you
section?
see value of 1 lakh rupees or 1 crore. Now, all good platforms
Hmm.
which advisors use give you an option of SIP and lump sum and their commensurate returns, along with the provision of changing the date. So while here we only have a lump sum value and the date change option, and the values aren't displayed as a legend. You have to keep the cursor on the black on the black line or the blue line to see how much the index would have grown had you invested 1 lakh or 1 crore rupees. Here out here, even that is not shown. So what happens is that it becomes difficult to see that what this value could have been. Uh, so this chart could be complete if we out here, for example, if we show what 1 crore has grown to, from where we've started. This is basically fourth
Yes.
line.
So, I mean, that is what we are showing, right? 1 crore, if you would have invested from 2020 till 2025, this is what you will get
No,
from this.
so let me complete. You don't
Yeah.
have the commensurate value for the index, right? Flexi cap, and you don't have an SIP option.
SIP option, oh yeah, right here we do not have as a tab, but there is this run SIP detailed SIP analysis. You can
Hmm.
just click on that
Hmm.
and it takes you to this SIP page that way.
No, so
Yeah, so here you could change the time period or for that matter the installment amount, wherein you can also generate a report as well.
I've seen this also. Just a
Hmm.
suggestion in this slide also. You see the legends on the right hand side, which is your uh,
Yeah.
these horizontal lines, these
Uh,
bars that show you that there's hardly any difference in the SIP, irrespective of the starting date.
hmm.
If you could just also kind of just mention what has been the average variation, in the sense, if you look at most dates throughout the month, what has been the average variation, so that what I mean to say is that the value fluctuates or oscillates between 10 lakh or whatever, 1037 and 1041 across various dates of the month for the SIP.
Sure.
Hi, this is Arnab. So just want to understand, you want to see kind of the range of the
Not the
values on the
range,
right hand side?
not the range, Arnab, just that so basically 1037 to 1042 is 0.02% of variation. That's about it. What is the variation? So the variation is negligible.
Fair enough.
So
Okay, so you want to see just effectively how volatile these are depending on the
I mean,
date changing.
how volatile these outcomes have been, because you've studied SIP across different dates of the month, which is, so
Yeah,
we all
fair
know for
enough.
a fact that if you look at the values, not the histograms or the horizontal lines, which are not optically, which optically look different, but if you look at the value between the 1037 and 1039, there's hardly any difference on such a big base, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
What I mean to say is that, for example, HDFC Flexi Cap across the month, irrespective of the date you start SIP over a period of 20 years or 30 years would have given you hardly a 0.2% or 0.2% of variation in the
Yeah.
outcome. So it becomes a little easy for anybody comprehending that, there's hardly any difference out here. So that's how it becomes a little easier for us to even, explain it.
Sure, we can show the variations here. That's not a problem. Let's put that down as an item.
And because what happens, Arnab, is that the last page that your colleague showed, that had lump sum, this has SIP. So while I understand
Right.
that, the data is different and hence the layout and page, but generally a lot of platforms show it on the same page. I mean, I'm just talking part of the UI or navigation that, we could,
Sure.
it becomes that much more convenient. And then,
And what we can do is we can probably put this section. We can make this section also available in the funds tab as a fund section, as in the
that would
fund
be of a
page.
great help. Yeah. And
Yeah.
along with SWP, because what happens is that
Right.
uh, SWP is also a contextually relevant discussion, because if I see your SWP versus any other platform, it
Yeah.
shows you a breakdown of the returns post SWP and the month-wise variations as well, which I could not find here. I don't know whether
Right.
I could not find here. So, I mean, uh, so that's like, for example, this is a validation chart that we see of the SIP, right? The month-wise
Yeah.
direction chart. I did not see a similar chart when it comes to SWP, although the value was there, in the sense the outcome was there. Uh,
Right. Yeah. I mean, this. I guess. Uh, the chart that we show for the SIP.
yeah,
I mean, it's interesting from a certain point, but I mean, after a while, these things also become quite luck based, right? So I mean, the fact that starting the SIP on the 8th is better than the 6th doesn't, technically, there's no valid reason for the 8th of a month to be better than a 7th or 6th or 15th, right? I mean,
yeah.
obviously these are statistical numbers, so we show them because they're kind of interesting to look at. I think this is why we probably didn't include in the SWP, but we can put this chart on as well.
No, I'm saying a similar chart of SWP will tell you. I'll tell you why I'm
Yeah.
telling from the perspective of the fact that a lot of people are in the disbelief that irrespective of the SIP date, the outcome is the same, which is shown in this chart, right? So
Right.
this is one of the mythbusters. The
Yeah.
second mythbuster is, Arnab, that
Yeah.
I will outrun my corpus, because in between a 10 or a 15-year period, the market cracks twice or thrice by, say, 25-30%.
Right.
So if I withdraw 6% per annum of my opening corpus, I am sure
Mhm.
to run dry in between somewhere, which is not the fact in most cases.
Right. Right.
So that validation, which is the left side validation, which we see on this screen, if there's similar validation for SWP, you will see optically that despite Lehman crisis, or despite that COVID crisis, when the
Yeah.
market fell by, say, 30%, for example, and you
Yeah.
continue with your withdrawals, despite that,
That the
then
SWP survived
correct,
basically.
and you are on
Fair
a
enough.
12, 15, 17% XIR despite
Yeah.
those withdrawals. So that is a very powerful visual tool, which I
It's-
found missing in a comprehensive manner on your platform.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Can you just go to the SWP page quickly? So just okay. So we're basically showing you what the final value is, right?
Yeah,
And so here, obviously, there's that one chart missing, as in starting at different points. That's fine. Starting at different dates of the month. But what
no, no. So
what more do we
what is
add here?
missing?
Like, when
Here
will
what
it
is missing
end?
is no, no. Here what is missing is that the XIRR, despite withdrawal, is missing.
Okay, fine. Yeah, that we have to solve. Fair enough. And okay, fair enough. So we need to put the XRR here as well as the dates, the single dates.
Correct, correct.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's fine.
And one more basic question which I asked
Yeah,
last time also, you'll have to excuse me. I forgot how to do it.
yeah,
It logs me out every time. So please tell me.
sure, sure.
You had explained me last time also, but I
Yeah,
forgot.
yeah, yeah. Go
Uh,
ahead.
so how do you stay logged in?
Oh, yeah. So, Anshu, let's go to the main page. So you basically, on the main page, go on the top to the
Okay.
settings tab
Hmm.
here, and then you go to security, which is the third tab.
Security. Okay.
Yeah, and here, for example, in fact, Anshu hasn't generated one, so she doesn't
Acha.
need one. But let's just do it, and just so you generate this. It's making now. This is it. So you see
Okay.
this link. You will
And I
get
copy.
your own link, right?
Okay. Okay.
And you copy it and ideally just save it as a bookmark on your bookmark bar
Sure.
on the top. And basically what happens is if you go to this link, it will automatically log you in.
That will be of great help. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. I had forgotten
No
last
problem.
time.
No problem. No problem.
Right.
Thank you.
So, sir, I also had a question that while choosing mutual funds, I usually look after the SIP book of the fund.
Right.
So, is it possible for us to actually get the SIP book of the fund, and then it could be a good parameter to judge one mutual fund?
Yes. Yeah. This actually, other people have also asked us for this. We haven't yet been able to source this data, but we are looking for it. If you're aware of a public source that is showing the SIP book for different funds, please let us know, and we'll try our best to kind of get it out from there. But we are trying to talk to our data provider to kind of source this data. Right now, we don't have it, unfortunately.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes. Can we add the ECAS statement to it?
Yeah, you can upload an ECAS statement here. Ansu, why don't you go ahead and show?
Yes, sure, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in order to upload the ECAS file, we have this tool of statement analyzer, wherein you could upload ECAS file either from NSDL, CDSL, or CAMS. And once you upload them, all you need to do is select that file, select the file password, which will be apparently the PAN number, and click on check file. Once that is done, within few seconds, it will show up on this right-hand side. And in order to run an analysis on the same, you go back to the platform. In the second last tab, which is the portfolios tab, you can click on this plus icon of add a new portfolio, and the option is load statement analyzer right here. Click on that, and the CAS that you would have uploaded will show up. All you need to do is click on this plus icon that you see on the left. So this is how you can upload it, and then you can as well save as well. Just click on create to save this ECAS uploaded portfolio onto the platform.
Can you just revisit the part once again?
Yeah, sure. If maybe you can drop your mobile number, your contact number on the chat box, we could get back to you because this is specifically a topic related Q&A that we are currently doing. So if you can just drop in your mobile number, our team will reach out to you in some time.
Just redo the same thing. I just missed actually. How did you get to upload the file?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the tool is called as Statement Analyzer. You click on that.
Okay, now understood. Okay,
Yeah, okay, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right. So there is a question in the chat box. In the market trap that is generated in the markets tab, can you have your logo and no engine logo? So what we provide on our platform for our premium and pro users is typically a co-branded reports, be it a PDF or a PPT that we provide from the platform is a co-branded report. So on the left, predominantly it will be your company logo. On the right, we do provide NGEN Markets logo as well, which is typically for data validation and authentication, because these are the data that run on our backend. For that purpose, we show or rather provide these reports in a co-branded format only. Right. So there's also one more question. Is it possible to add a few strategy indices in the markets tab? Is that correct? You're asking in the markets tab, right? So currently in the markets tab, we only show the BSE and NSE top sectoral indices as well, be it the pro or the premium version. That is what we show. We have limited it to a specific number of indices in the markets tab at the moment.
Yeah, and so just a quick one. I think there are some strategy indices that we recently added. Um, are they not available in the market section here at all?
Um,
So, so the person that asked the question, can you give us an example of any kind of strategy index that you were looking at? You can just type in the chat or tell us.
So mainly the smart beta indices, be it on say momentum or low
Okay.
volatility.
Ansu, just search momentum over there. Is there anything there?
no, currently here we just show these for BSE and
Um,
NSE. We can
no, in
search
the
it right
chart.
here.
In
Yeah,
the
yeah,
chart,
that
yeah.
will definitely come up.
Okay, so what you can do here is, yeah, you can search. Some of the strategy indices are here, so they get added to the chart. And once you add them, you can add few more, as many as you like. And then if you print the market wrap, they'll show up on the chart. They'll
But
get printed in the market wrap.
will it come in the tabular format or the chart format over there?
No, in the chart only.
We wanted more in the tabular
In the
format.
table
So
format,
that
yeah. There is a slightly kind of longer term requirement that we're trying to fulfill, which is to provide a lot of customization to this markets page where you can change the indices that are in the table as per your needs. And I think once we do that, you'll be able to kind of set some of the strategy indices there instead of some of these regular ones that we have here. So hopefully that should be out soon.
also not sounding so
Yeah.
stringent on this, but
Yeah.
I was just wondering if I need to create a report out of NGEN, I can still
Mhm.
very well do it through Excel, and in that I can still have only my logo and not the NGEN logo. Then what
That's
is
not a
the
problem. Yes, of course.
then what is the point of having a market rep with your logo? I'm just wondering that.
Oh, see, look, I mean, obviously this is a file that is coming directly um, out of our
We can say
software.
it source as an engine, no issue about it.
Right, right.
Recall value. In fact, I give full credit for the data in all my
Sure,
reports
sure,
to engine,
sure.
but only in context to the logo, it becomes confusing to the my clients that whether it's who is getting this report, whether engine is doing it or my farm is doing it. That is the only point.
I see. I think what we can do, which we
Sorry, your voice
sorry.
is
Yeah, yeah. What we can do, which we've done with other PPT versions also, is we can change the logo on the right hand side to say powered by. I think that's what it used to be. So we can probably easily change to that. I think legally speaking, we've been told that anything that comes out of software must have at least a powered by on there because, if you take it in Excel and you change it, you know, technically speaking, our responsibility is over, right? But the only thing is, if a PDF is coming out, we kind of have to put that in there because if any of the numbers are wrong, then it's our fault, not yours. So that's mainly the reason. But I understand your point because on the top right it says NGEN Markets, not powered by, which is a much
yeah,
smaller logo. So we can change that.
yeah,
I
please.
think it used to
Thanks.
be that anyway. No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I just tried, using that link, to log in without, entering user ID and password, but it is not happening.
Yeah, if you just drop your number, we'll give you a call. We can connect
Okay,
and check
okay,
out what the
sure,
issue is. No problem.
sure, sure.
Questions, please let us know. All right, so if there are no further questions, we would end it for today. Thank you all for joining in. You could anytime visit our YouTube page. There is a direct link which takes you to our YouTube page, wherein we have a dedicated playlist for all the webinars that have been conducted up until now. A total of 156 videos have been uploaded, and today's webinar as well will get uploaded. Thank you all for joining in. Hope to see you again next week with a new topic. Thank you.